I'd like to start the homily today by basically giving you a spoiler alert. This is not a talk on how to meditate, nor is it a theological discourse on an Old Testament story. What I want to talk about today is a simple expression of how a story has stayed with one person and spoke to him in different ways as he has grown through life. That's the great thing about a story. The words of the story remain the same, but the way it speaks to us changes as we seem to need him the most. The story of Elijah is one of those stories. I first learned the story in my Sunday school classes in the fundamentalist church I grew up in, and later even taught the story to adult classes when I too became a Sunday school teacher. In fact, today's homily is actually a conclusion of the last time I tried to teach it as a Sunday school lesson. In the 25 plus year span of time since I left the Christian church, I pretty much forgot about this story as well as reading anything out of the Bible. I focused my spiritual efforts on meditation, reading about meditation and those traditions that supported a lifestyle and tradition of meditation. Over the last couple of months, however, in at least 3 separate writings, mention was made about the still small voice and the story of Elijah. So I guess a voice was telling me that I better look back at this old friend and see what it says to me today. Well, here's the story. Elijah basically blew up the status quo of his society, and in so doing, he got a lot of rich and powerful people angry, so much so that he began to fear for his life. So he ran and wound up wandering around the wilderness for 40 days before he found himself on a mountaintop. Other than really feeling bad for himself, we don't know much about what Elijah did with his time in self-isolation. That 40 days of wandering. But I do know in those times of transition in my own life, there was an awful lot of soul searching, periods of reflection, eventually moving me from, aren't those other people horrible, to make me feel so bad about myself, to, maybe it could be something to do with me. Well, the journey eventually led Elijah to a mountaintop, and there he apparently found a nice, comfortable cave. The story continues with a number of fantastic events: storms, earthquakes, winds, fire, right out of the Lord of the Rings. All these events happened around Elijah. And if Elijah was looking for his God through all of these outside events, he didn't find him. See, the result of this turmoil was that he experienced a still, small voice. The story doesn't say where the voice came from, but by knowing the Spirit was not in all of the events, then it could only have come from one other place, deep inside of Elijah. I think the storms that he experienced represent the old ego that Elijah had about himself. He had to let go of what others thought and threatened to do to him. He began to look inside at his own source of energy and spirit. What Elijah's story is saying to me at this point is that there are times when I've got to stop worrying about others. I've got to remember my strength, my skills, and other abilities that are what really define me. Elijah's 40 days of wandering were not so much a high adventure nature experience, but a realization that he was still connected to the world, to others, and yes, even to himself and his spirit. This journey took our hero right back to who he was, not to who he felt others perceived him to be. As Benjamin Riggs stated in Finding God in the Body, it is our task to transform the world, not by trying to change the people in it, but by recovering the spark of basic goodness that shines within ourselves. The words, as the great sage Bobby reminded us, we need to stop unwrapping and listen. The love's already there within us, but first we need to listen. I already stated that this was not a talk on how to meditate, but meditation is a meaningful way to open the closed doors, to stop the unwrapping, to stop the storms, and listen. By learning to hear and listen to the still small voice within each one of us, we hear and feel the beauty of ourselves. We are able to reconnect with ourselves and in turn open ourselves to where we belong with others. Reconnecting after such experiences open us to be able to hear the beauty of what we have previously missed. I know it happened to me one morning on the mountaintop I am currently living on. One of the great joys Sarah and I have is to spend nice quiet mornings on the front deck with a cup of coffee, watching the birds and the deer that are much part of our world. I have spent quite a number of times in my younger days backpacking and camping on numerous trails and woods in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and West Virginia. So the opportunity to be able to spend my retirement years in the wilds of the Texas Hill Country are like coming home. But a couple of months ago, I was struck by a totally new experience while enjoying my coffee. The experience made me realize that even though I had spent time being in nature, I really missed out with being with nature. My camping and hiking trips had always been about destination and not about the journey. On that morning, as I sat there sipping my coffee, leaning back in my chair, I closed my eyes and became aware of where I was sitting. With my eyes closed in the morning quiet, I listened. For the first time that morning, even with all the hours I had logged in nature, I actually heard, not just saw, the birds fly. In the silence of that morning, birds. I felt I was not only in nature, but with nature. The morning sun warmed me, the breeze wafted across my face, and hearing their wings, I flew with the birds wherever it was they were willing to take me. For the first time in the silence of that morning, I realized where I was, who I was with, and was open to listening a whole new way. The best explanation of the feeling I had was Mr. Mole experienced in the wind in the willows. Then suddenly the mole felt a great awe fall upon him, an awe that turned his muscles to water, bowed his head, and rooted his feet to the ground. It was no panic of terror. Indeed, he felt wonderfully at peace and happy. But it was an awe that smote him and held him, and without seeing, he knew it could only mean that some august presence was very, very near. I realized that that august presence that I too felt was me. It was me with all the ego unwrapped and brushed aside. Me, the silence and everything I could see, feel, and hear around me. It was a part of me that was lost, though I tried to find it while I was spending time wandering. Just recapturing that is possible inside all along is to truly get in touch with that spark of basic goodness that is within all of us. By being still, listening, and learning to be present in this moment, here and now, gives each and every one of us a chance to experience this. So I am comfortable in saying that in the long run, Elijah was not running away from the fear he had of other people. He was running toward finding himself. I guess you could say that he fits in with the not all who wander are lost category. Now, it gives me hope anyway. Now we get to the final part of the story. After all the time he spent running, feeling sorry for himself, wandering for 40 days, only to find more storms, more noise and turbulence around him, he hears a still small voice. Now, obviously, when you hear a voice, the voice has to say something. Now it's time for the big reveal. I'm ready to hear something profound. So here it is. What did the still small voice said? What are you doing here? Huh? That's it? Yep, that's it. What are you doing here? When Sarah and I read through this story the first time, we had a lot of fun with the inflection on how this was said. What are you doing here? 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 Then Sarah cut on not so much how to say it, but it cut right to the heart of what was said. What are you doing here? Here. Feet on the ground in this space. What are you doing here? Now. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, can you honestly say, I am here, I am present? Am I truly here? Can I see, feel, and hear what is really needed and what I can do about it? We can't always guess what the future brings. We can and will do is in line with us understanding what our true selves actually are, our gifts, our talents, and our ability to react right here, right now. Norman Fisher reminds us that it is not the task we do, it is how we do it. It's a spirit, an attitude. We do live in a big world with lots of noise and commotion going on. A walk through the city may unnerve us before we get to the soup kitchen, but we do get there. We do our task because that's what needs to be done. That's what we are doing there. This still small voice reminds us that what it comes down to is that we need to stop being stuck on ourselves. We learn to unwrap the presents and get on with it. Think of others. Do something to make them happy. Anything. Something small like saying, hello, how are you? And mean it. A good place to start even in today's divisive world. Just yesterday on the Unitarian Universalist Hysterical Society Facebook page, I saw a post of a young man sitting on a park bench with Jesus. The young man says to Jesus, so, why do you allow things like famine, war, suffering, disease, crime, homelessness, and despair exist in our world? Jesus looks at the young man and replies, interesting that you should bring that up, as I was about to ask you the exact same question. Remember, the spirit was not in the noise, the storm, the earthquake, the fire, all the interruptions around us in our lives. It was a still small voice, and the question that that voice asked went directly to each and every one of us. So, my friends, the world keeps turning. Each day flows into another day. Seasons change, just like the little boy and when the wind stops find out. And each new day, each new experience, as the world keeps turning, gives us the opportunity to respond. We don't know what tomorrow brings, but when you listen to the voice, it can be exciting, and it can give us a more meaningful now. My Northwood friends, here we are. What are you doing here? I can't wait to find out in the coming year. Until then, I wish you all peace and wellness. Let it be so.